Hello and welcome to episode 262 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is February 3rd, 2022. And today I'm wearing my Slipstravaganza again. This was the mystery knit-along shawl by Stephen West in 2020. And it was actually the first time that I knit one of his mystery knit-along shawls. And I think the reason I did is that Wolldackel, who were the hand dyers that I used to buy my hand dyed yarn from, they had these packages where they put colors together for the knit-along, and they had already seen the shawl, so I thought they know what they're doing, and I really liked the color combo that they put together, and they had a different color combination that my sister loved. So we both bought the yarn packet from Wolldackel. I think she changed at least one color, and then we knit we took part in the mystery knit-along. Looking back, I would say that the main color and one of the contrast colors are very, very similar. They were a little less similar on the skein because there you could see that one was basically white and the other color had a lot of speckles. But knitting them next to one another, there's hardly any contrast. So I was a bit disappointed in that, but I really like the shawl. I knit most of it as per pattern. I remember I knit fewer of those stripes in this last clue. I think you were supposed to do color 1, 2, 3 and then again 1, 2, 3, and I decided not to do one of the stripes. So instead of doing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, I did 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, and then I did the I cord in the same color as this stripe. So I still like the look of it, but I think my shawl is a tiny bit smaller here. I think the rest was as per pattern. Whoopsie. And it is a huge, big shawl, so it was fine for me to have it a little smaller. He likes to design really big shawls, and I'm a fairly small person, so I get away with making them a little smaller. And the pullover I'm wearing is a very simple V-neck raglan pullover that I knit top down. I didn't use a pattern. It's a fairly long pullover as well, so it's nice for this cold weather that we have at the moment. And I wanted to knit a very basic sweater, and back then I was thinking of writing the pattern, and my idea was to have a basic pullover pattern for the main yarns that Wolle used to sell, and then I could give people the basic pattern and then they could add a lace pattern or a cable pattern or whatever, but they would have a pattern that was written for that yarn. So that was the idea, but even then I wasn't able to write patterns, so I never really got down to writing the pattern, but I still wear the pullover. So the pullover is 10 years old. I knit it in 2015, and the shawl is almost 5 years old, so the knit-along was in 2020, and I have also knit the mystery knit-along shawl by Stephen West for the last 2 years, and I will probably knit it again this year. So I am wearing the shawl different now than before, just to have it a bit warmer around here because it is fairly cold today. And I have this open neck. I should have worn a turtleneck underneath the pullover or something, but that's what I have the shawl for. Okay, so that's what I'm wearing. Then on to finished objects. I have 2 finished objects, but one of them is also a new cast on for last week. So I only had 1 new cast on and 2 finished objects, so that's fairly good. And the older of the finished projects are these socks for my sister. So these are the plain 6-ply socks that I knit for her in a colorway that she picked out some years ago. And I used the same pattern that I used for the sock couple that I knit last year, which were also knit with 6-ply sock yarn by Opal. And they are fairly simple. It's just a knit 3 purl 1 pattern. The ribbing is done in knit 1 purl 1. I did the short row heel, a simple short row heel, and the only thing that's a little special with these socks are the toes, because I again knit anatomical toes for her, which means that on this side the toe looks rather usual, like a traditional toe, but if I turn them around, you can see these little thingies sticking out from the sock blocker, and that's because of the anatomical toe. And if I take the socks off the sock blockers, you can see that the toe actually looks like this. And I don't remember, I think this was the first sock, and the first time I showed you the finished first sock, it was a bit longer, but then my sister tried them on and she said they are a little bit too long. And she also didn't like the fact that after decreasing on only one side, the pattern that I used had you decrease on both sides, so that the very tip of the sock was a bit rounded, and she didn't like it. So she asked me to undo the whole thing that had decreases on both sides and then finish the sock without that part. So that's what I did. I finished the second sock, the left one, with only the decreases on this side, and then I Kitchener stitched the stitches together, and she tried it on and she loved it. She said that's perfect. So that's what I did for the first sock. Then I undid the seam, and I frogged the part that had decreases on both sides, and now this is what the socks look like. They do look a bit funny when they're not worn, but that doesn't matter. The important thing is that when she puts them on, she loves them, they fit perfectly, and this is the way she wants her toes to be in the future. And I will try and do them this way whenever I knit her socks, which there's another pair of socks I'm knitting for her that I'll show you in just a moment. So why do they look different? No, they just look different. I think one of them was on a sock blocker for the whole week because I showed it here, and the other wasn't. So that's probably the reason one of them looks a bit bigger, but they shouldn't be bigger. I usually always count the rounds that I knit, and they should be the same size. The stripes are in different places. The colors are in different places, which I like. And I hope my sister will enjoy getting and wearing these socks. Now, the other finished object is also the new project, and that's the January gnome for this year of gnomes. In the comments, I think in the German video, somebody already asked me, aren't you taking part in the year of gnomes, and where's your January gnome? And I wanted to knit it before, but because I was ill, I forgot about it. But last week, I decided to knit a gnome that goes with the baby cardigan that I showed last week. So I used the yarn that I used for the baby cardigan to knit the hat, and then I used some leftover yarn that I had at home to knit a gnome. And because it's the same yarn as the cardigan, of course I wanted the baby to have this gnome. But I also wanted a gnome that I could show today, and I also wanted a gnome that I could use for all the gnomes of 2025 picture. So what I did is I actually knit two gnomes that look exactly like this, except for the bottom. The first gnome actually has a pure pink bottom, but then I realized that it could be the yarn might not be enough to knit a second gnome. So after I finished the first one, I knit all four arms for both the gnomes, and then I knit the body on this gnome, and then I actually ran out of yarn, and I used the pink yarn from up here to finish the body, and then I knit both the beards, and I put everything together. And if you look on the Ravelry page for this gnome, there are actually two gnomes. You can see both the gnomes, and but I was able to give the baby cardigan away last week, and it fits the baby. It's slightly too big, which is like perfect, so it can still grow a little bit, and it can still wear the cardigan this whole winter and maybe into spring, depending on what kind of weather we have. And then by next autumn, I'm pretty sure it'll be too small, so I can knit another cardigan. Yeah, so that's the reason I knit 2 January gnomes for the Year of Gnomes by Sarah Shira. The pattern I used is the Never Not Gnoming pattern. That was the first gnome pattern that she ever published, and there are 3 different sizes. And I knit Natasha, which is the smaller gnome that can stand, and she's basically the same size as the ornament gnome that you can hang, that it has a rounded bottom so it doesn't stand. Yeah, so that's the pattern I used, and it's the first gnome for this year, and I will definitely at least knit another 11 gnomes, so 1 for every month, and I will definitely knit all the mystery gnomes that she comes up with this year. I think there are 2 mystery gnomes at least planned for this year, and also some, I think, a smaller version of a former mystery gnome. And whenever she doesn't come up with a new pattern, I will probably knit a pattern out of her book, The Gnomes of the Grimblewoods. That's what I wanted to do in January, but then I didn't have the book at home, so I decided to go and use an old pattern of hers. And yeah, so the first gnome of 2025. That's all the finished objects. Then on to works in progress. As usual, I start with socks, and I'll start with the older sock. And that's another sock for my sister. And it's another pattern by Stephen West. So he not only designs mystery shawls, he also designs mystery socks. And this was last year's mystery sock knit along, and he called it the surprise Sockalong. And I'm on the second sock. I'm knitting them for my sister. And last week I showed you that I'd finished the top of the foot. I'd finished the heel flap and the heel turn. And I've now finished the gusset, which is the bit with the decreases. And I've also knit part of the what's that called? The sole of the sock. But I still have to knit that many rows to finish the sole, and once I've done that I can knit both of the toes for both of the socks, because the first sock doesn't have a toe yet. My sister's already told me which one is supposed to be the left and which is supposed to be the right sock, and then we only need to talk about the colors that I'm going to use for the toe, and then hopefully in the not too far future these socks will get done. The next pair of socks that I worked on are the socks for my friend who I knit socks for her husband. He got the Bigfoot socks, and now I finished the first sock for her. And the interesting thing with these socks is that I'm using the 4-ply rainforest colorway for most of the sock, but for the heel and the toe I used the 6-ply yarn in the same color. So you can hardly see a difference between the heel and the toe and the rest of the sock. You can feel the difference, but it's really hard to see, and that's basically what I wanted. I wanted them to not really stand out but still be different. Finished the first sock, started the second sock. Colors are coming out completely differently again, which I like. Yeah, and now I finished the ribbing, so I can just do simple stockinette stitch. Perfect on the go project where I don't have to look, where I don't have to think. And the next pair of socks, also a plain vanilla sock, which is rather unusual for me, but these are the socks that I'm knitting for my son, and he only wears black. So I am actually knitting a pair of black socks, but I've put in a little bit of gray at the just after the ribbing, and I finished the heels on both the socks. So these are simple short row heels. Can't really see them. I rearranged the stitches on my needle so that the beginning of the round is at the back of the sock, so in the middle of my stitches, not at the beginning, so that the where you can see the beginning and end of round is going to be at the back of the sock, not on the side. And now that the heels are finished, I just need to knit the foot of the sock, and I still have quite a bit to go. And then the toe will have an interesting detail where I'm going to use the contrast color again. And my goal is actually to finish them this week. So let's see if that works. That reminds me, I have signed up for the Sock Madness this year. This is the 19th Sock Madness. The sign-ups started February 1st, and you have until February 14th to sign up if you want to take part. If you sign up for the Sock Madness, you will be sent the pattern for the qualification socks. And then you have to finish those socks within 2 weeks without mistakes. Take all the pictures, put them up on Ravelry, and send the link to your Ravelry page. Excuse me. And if you've done everything right and you're accepted, you will be put on a team and you can compete in the Sock Madness. If you finish your socks but make a mistake, you can still participate as a cheerleader. You will still get all the patterns. And by the way, if you sign up, you can already download the pattern for the warm-up pattern, and you can knit some warm-up socks to get ready for the Sock Madness. So yeah, that was all the 3 pairs of socks that I knit on last week. I signed up for the Sock Madness. I'm not sure if I'm going to knit the warm-up socks. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I can still make that decision later. Yeah, going on from socks, I continue knitting on the scarf or loop scarf that I am knitting in double knitting technique out of the yarn that I was given for Christmas. And I also got the book with all the patterns, the color work patterns in for Christmas, and I cast the project on Christmas Eve. So this is my Christmas project 2024, and I added 2 more patterns, a small color work pattern and then a bigger one that looks sort of like a plant with vines and yeah, whatever. That's what it looks like. I liked it. That's why I decided to knit it, and I will keep trying to do a little and a bigger chart pattern, whatever, every week, so that it slowly grows, but I can still have a long time enjoying the yarn and the patterns and the knitting. And yeah, once I finished the scarf, I will sew the beginning and the end together. That's why I started with a provisional cast on, and then I'll have a beautiful loop scarf. That's the plan. So that's that. Then the other small project I'm knitting out of sock yarn is the Bobble Hat by Deb Milstein. I wrote down her name, and she already commented underneath the video that she likes the way I'm knitting that the hat's coming out with that yarn. So the pattern is basically written for a hand-dyed yarn where you have bits of contrast color and lots of main color, and then you can use the contrast color to knit these bobbles. And I asked her if I could knit the hat using a machine printed yarn. So I picked out this opal colorway where you have lots of white and a little bit of dark gray or black. And I wasn't quite sure whether it would work, but it works beautifully. I'm really happy with how this comes out. At first I was worried that the bobbles, the nubs, would be too regular, because usually with a printed yarn the contrast colors come in a fairly regular fashion, but with this yarn they don't, and I really enjoy seeing where the next bobble is going to be. And I'm still knitting straight up. I've almost got the length that I need to start the decreases, so I'm pretty sure I can start the decreases this week and to hopefully finish the hat this week. And yeah, I really love the way this comes out. So on the inside you can see it's mostly white, just sometimes a little bit of the dark color where the noop starts or ends. And yeah, it's a really fun test knit that I'm doing, and I'm really grateful that I was sent the pattern, even though I'm not using the yarn that she had in mind. And I hope to show you the finished hat next week. Then the next small project that I'm working on is the baby cocoon that I am also it's not a test knit. I'm just knitting a version for the designer who sent me the yarn for free. I don't know if I said that last week. I got the yarn and the pattern and everything for free, so I could try it out and show it to you. And it starts off with a stretchy cast on, then you do quite a bit in stockinette, so you get a rolled edge. That's supposed to keep the baby safe but give the hands room to move. And then you have this cable pattern that's supposed to keep the whole thing in a bit so that the baby doesn't fall out of the sleeping bag, so it sits a bit tighter. But then for the rest of the body, we go back to stockinette. And now I can knit in stockinette for quite a bit. And once I've reached the height that she calls for, I will do the decreases, and then I will finish the sleeping bag in a sort of rounded fashion. I'll show that to you once I get there. But now that I finished with the cable pattern, it's a lot quicker to continue. And let's see how far I get this week with this beautiful baby bag, baby sleeping bag. So that's that. Then I continue knitting on the Arctic pullover. I'm knitting it out of Westfalen Wolle, which is a German yarn that's produced completely in Germany. It's undyed, it's unprocessed. I don't know how to say that. It's not superwash, so it's a very natural and a bit rustic yarn. It's not super soft, but it's nice. I think I like the way it feels, and I'm looking forward to wearing it. I finished the second sleeve. So both the sleeves are done now. I've also added a bit to the front and back. I've already tried it on a few times, and I think I may add a little bit of length. And then I decided to do short rows. They're not in the pattern, but because this is a rather warm pullover, and it's fairly wide, I don't want it to be too short, but on the other hand, I don't want it too long. I don't want a tunic or something like that. But because it's nice to have the back nice and warm, I decided to add just a few short rows before I start the ribbing. So as I said, I may add a few more rounds, and then I will do short rows to lower the back a little bit. I already did short rows up here, so that the neck is more comfortable. I like for the neck to be a bit lower in the front than in the back. And I will have to make sure that I do the short rows properly so that this bit stays a bit shorter and the back gets a bit longer. And once I finish the short rows, I will finish with the same ribbing that I used on the sleeves and in the neckline. And yeah, and I'm pretty sure it'll still be cold enough to be wearing this pullover this winter, if I get a move on. Yeah, and the next pullover, the other pullover I'm knitting at the moment is my Advent calendar pullover. I got together with several friends and we collected 20-gram leftover yarns, sock yarn, throughout the year. And then I put together the Advent calendar so that everybody got leftover yarn from all the others. And then we got these 20-gram mini balls of yarn, and I decided to knit a pullover out of most of them. I won't use all of them. For the rest of them, I will probably knit socks, I think, just leftover socks. But I finished the first sleeve. I cast on stitches for the front and back. I also sewed them together with this neon color that was also in the Advent calendar. And I've now split for the neckline. So I added, I think last week I'd finished with this color. I then added 10 grams in this color. I didn't want the whole stripe. It would have gotten too wide, I think. But I did 10 grams of that color. And then I started knitting this color, and one other color. I had 2 balls of the same yarn from different people because we all knit opal yarn. So we end up using the same colors. And so I just ended up having 2 of the colors twice, and I decided to use those 2 colors for the front and back, so I can knit them separately, but they will still look the same. This is the first of the colors, and haven't done too much yet, but I've knit about this much, and I am not knitting any ribbing or anything up here, so the plan is that it should roll so that I do get a bit of a neckline and it doesn't come up too high. So that's the plan for that. On the other edge, I continue knitting the knit stitches every other wrong side row so that I get these sort of kind of like a ribbing that keeps the stitches from rolling up too much. Yeah, very colorful. I'm still very happy with it. I enjoy the way the colors look and the way this knits up. It's an easy knit. It's just plain stockinette stitch most of the time. Now that I've past this point, so only the bits where I have to make decisions, it's a bit slower, but once I've made these decisions, I can just keep knitting and it's simple to do, and I really enjoy it a lot. So that brings me to the blanket. I've added a few more squares to my memory blanket. Last week it was only 3. So last week I showed you that I had finished one row of squares. So I started at this edge again. And it's always when I start at this edge that the black yarn, the black border already is already knitted on. But on the other side, there's no black yarn. So once I finish the last row of squares, I will have to add some black to this bit. I already knit that black yarn when I decided I won't knit any wider, only longer. I already put on one. I think I picked up stitches, knit one row and then cast off. That's what I did, I think. And that's what I'm going to do for this edge. And then also for the top edge once I finished. But these are the 3 squares that I knit in the last week. And this was from the Opal Abo, but from the subscription box, but it has now come out in one of their series. This is the, is it the Beauty or the Merino yarn? I forgot. No, but this should be Beauty. I think this was one of the Beauty colorways, which is a bit softer than the normal Opal yarn. And the Merino yarn that they have now is even softer. But I knit those 2 colors into a hat, a reversible hat. So one half is this color, one half is that color. And then I usually wear the soft side inside and the brighter one outside. But sometimes I turn it around, just whatever I like at that moment. And then this is the colorway that I used to knit another Sock Madness bonus pattern. It was the one with the fish. And I used this color plus dark gray. And the dark gray is going to be the next square that I knit. So 3 down, 7 to go. And then the edges. And then I will, at some point, finally finish the blanket. And that brings me to my last project for this week. And the last project is always the knit along that we are doing. And right now we're doing a knit along for warm socks with cables. I finally managed to do a translation of the tutorial video. So that's up now on the English channel as well. If you want to join in and you maybe haven't knit socks with cables before, I explain how to increase the stitches so that the sock still has the right size. And I show you how to knit those tiny little cables. And I think once you've done those and you understand how cables work, you can also knit bigger cables and more complex cables. And you just have to make sure how many stitches do you need to put on the cable needle, and then whether to put the cable needle in front or in the back. It's only those 2 questions, and otherwise you just knit the stitches and that's it. I finished the first one. Had I finished it last week? I don't remember. But I've continued knitting on the second one. So the second one I finished, I think I already finished this one last week, but I finished the leg of the second sock. I knit the heel. I'm finished with the heel, and yeah, I can go on knitting the foot. And with this sock, I had a cable every other knit column. So there are cables all around the sock. But with this sock, there are 5 knit columns without cables, and then 5 knit columns that are all cables. And I've now stopped knitting 2 of the cables because they sort of ran into the heel, and the other 3 cables are going to go on top of the foot. So there are going to be 3 cables on top of the foot for both socks, and 2 cables that run into the heel. They're just differently placed. Yeah, so that's everything I knit and crocheted. Did I crochet anything at all? No, it's just knitting. That's everything I knit last week. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!